Hello and welcome to the Curator Salon podcast. Today, my guest is Elli Milan from Milan Art Institute. Welcome, Elli.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you here as well and talk about the Milan Art Institute, which I always thought was actually in Milan, but apparently you are
Yeah.
in Florida. Is that right?
Yeah, we are located in Sarasota, Florida.
So Milan is actually your name, not the location.
Right. Yeah, that's my last name. A lot of people think it's in Milan, Italy, and yeah, and they'll email us and want to drop by, and it's pretty funny.
So tell me a bit more about your background, and then I'd really like you to tell us about the Milan Art Institute itself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm married to another artist. His name's John. And we have four kids together. They're all grown and they're all professional artists. So a whole art family. And I got my start right out of high school. So I went to Savannah College of Art and Design and then transferred to University of Georgia. And I worked as a bank teller for 1 year after I graduated and kind of moonlighted as an artist where I would paint on the weekends and then I would try to get my artwork in anywhere I could in cafes, restaurants, that kind of thing. And so a lady from Atlanta who owned a decor art company saw my art in a restaurant, an art show I was having, and she invited me down for an interview and basically was paying me a salary along with a few other artists to sit in a studio all day and paint. And so we were paid a salary and then we produced art, probably about 6 to 8 paintings a week. And then she would sell them. And obviously she would sell them for more than she was paying us. And so I did that for a year. And then I kind of figured out how to go out on my own and start my own art business from that point. And my whole world kind of opened up to, the kind of art that could sell very easily in the decor market. And so that's how I got my start. And basically have been a professional artist since 1996. That's when all that happened. And have been selling my art ever since. And then in 2010, I opened the school with the intent of helping other artists make a living selling their art professionally.
That's amazing. When you started, when you were training under the consultant lady, did she kind of direct what you should be making and things like that, or was that kind of much more free form for you to do as you wished?
She definitely had some boundaries, and I could kind of see based on what the other artists were doing, and they helped me a lot. And so like one girl was doing these like floral, botanical. That was kind of her realm, and her niche was botanical. So I had to stay away from botanicals, and she wanted to help me find my own. And at the time, this is, in the 90s, what was popular was this sort of Greek, Roman, classical architecture. And so I did these, basically architectural paintings with kind of a montage or a jumble of architectural elements and statues and a lot of classical kind of imagery. And that's what she started selling right away. So because she was selling it right away, I just had to keep painting that. So you basically painted what sold. And so you could experiment a little bit. And I did some experiments. I experimented with abstract, and it was a little bit ahead of its time for the decor market and didn't sell real well. So I, go back and do the architectural things. But yeah, she had some boundaries, and the boundary was, it had to sell.
Love that though. It's very specific, isn't it? But I think that's really I don't know. I just think it's great that she'd actually found a very particular kind of decor market. as her audience as well, which is, a little bit different to, just general art fair scene, which was, of course, very different back in the 90s anyway. And then when you started selling your work, you branched out on your own. Was that all your work you were selling, or was that, again, you were inviting in other people?
Yeah, it was still, decorative art. And the goal in decorative art is to be as well versed as possible and create variety. So almost like lines of work. So it could, in the end, look like, 10 different artists did it. And nobody's really associating your name, your brand, your heart, your messaging with your art. They are decorating a room, a restaurant, an office, a bank, a hotel, and they really just are out for, does it evoke a mood and elevate the room? And so the idea of selling a lot of art in the decor market is to create things that help people escape or go somewhere and kind of play into what's going on in the rest of the room or the point. So if it's a corporate job or a hospital, if it's in the waiting room in the hospital, you want to use a lot of greens and everything's relaxing. It's paths that lead into the distance. There's a future. You have to sort of think empathetically for the audience, what you're making. Whereas, if it's kitchen art for the home, at the time it was roosters and food still lifes and avocados and things like that. So, wine. So you definitely were thinking about the space versus your message. You had a message, but the message was, for the space and the people that were occupying that space. So it's very different than collectible art. I got into collectible art later and sort of transitioned, but initially it was creating for spaces. And so the reps and different wholesalers and people I worked with would kind of give me insight into what those spaces are. And they would say, I need some transitional landscapes, nothing very traditional, but nothing too contemporary, something in between, because I have a lot of people that want landscapes and something that is easy on the eyes, but they want to feel like they're posh and they're, up to date and have something contemporary. So, that was kind of the direction, I would get. And it was up to me to, figure it out so that the art would sell.
Love that story. Thanks so much for sharing. So taking us to the starting of the art school, what was your vision for art school when you founded the Milan Art Institute?
Yeah. So between my husband and I, we had sold a lot of artwork, and actually by this point we had sold close to 10,000 pieces of art. And so a lot of artists would message us, how are you doing it? Will you help me? Artists that we would meet just in our community, wanted to know how we were doing it and, could we help them? And it just seemed to be getting more and more over the years. And we wanted to help. We tried. We worked with a few artists, just kind of one-on-one. We even had a few artists as assistants along the way, but we never had this sort of platform or venue or organized method to teach and train artists. So it kind of happened because we moved to a property that had a giant multi-purpose building on this property. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's my dream studio. And but as we were, trying to get the money together to finish out this building, it became really evident that it was what was supposed to happen was opening the school. And so it kind of felt more like a calling or a mandate of sorts versus, or an assignment, than it was a choice that we made, for us. And so anyway, all the pieces really fit together. And so that's how we opened the school. And at first I was just super inexperienced. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just kind of taught, you know, little old ladies that, you know, were too tight with watercolor and wanted to experiment with mixed media and being loose, and or learn how to oil paint. And so a lot of the initial classes were about just breaking free of control and, you know, painting more intuitively, you know, trusting your gut. And what I found is these, you know, older women, which was mostly who was taking the class, people who were retired and knew how to paint realistically and really tight, but they didn't know how to loosen up and really express themselves. And stepping into that, they would cry and they would, you know, come undone and just be a little bit of an emotional mess. And it was like they were touching something from a long time ago that they hadn't dealt with in a long time. And it really opened up some things that were deep in them. And it was really interesting to watch. And I think it was the training I got in how to teach art and what people navigate through as they're learning. And a lot of that is giving up control and being willing to make something ugly until it's beautiful. You know, having that middle stage or that ugly stage, instead of finishing 1 square inch at a time, which is a huge, you know, that's what most people do when they, you know, first start learning or painting. And so eventually, you know, we finally got it after, I would say it took about 3 years, to the point where we were attracting people that really wanted a career, and then got our programs together. So in 2014, so that was 4 years later, we launched the mastery program. So that was and we still teach that today, a 1-year program that teaches artists everything they need to know, from skills in oil painting, mixed media, drawing, to finding their voice, which is a huge part of it, and knowing, you know, being able to really create a style or identify what their style is, and make that cohesive and consistent in a process, and then, you know, move into producing a cohesive body of work or a portfolio, and then knowing how to market, brand, and create a marketing strategy for that, and sell and promote their art, and basically build an art business. So yeah, that's kind of how the school came about. It sort of evolved, you know, and now it's online. You know, at first it wasn't. It was, everything was in person. You had to come to the school physically. But we started to
I was
get
going
people.
to ask you about it being online. Was that something that happened during COVID, or were you already moving on prior to that?
Yeah, it was before COVID. Because I could only teach in the mastery program about 25 students a year, because I taught them all myself. And my daughter helped me a little bit, Dimitra. And it just wasn't enough of me to go around, basically. And so we started to have people that were relocating from as far away as Australia or the UK or, you know, California or whatever. And they would relocate to Arizona. And then there were so many people writing to us, you know, from India and all over Europe, and saying, you know, I wish I could take the mastery program. Are you ever going to bring it online? And so in 2018, we brought it, you know, we produced it to be online and opened it up. And then we realized that people actually were learning better online than in person. So we stopped teaching in person, the mastery program, and we only teach it online.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What, a couple of questions, like what sort of level of artists are you attracting now? Are they complete beginners, or are they already similar to that very original audience you had, where they already have some training and competency, but now they're just coming to develop their skills?
Yeah. So because so much of our content is very like anti-elitist, you know, art establishment system, and you know, we don't pre-qualify anyone. Passion is the qualifier, you know, willing to put in the work is the qualifier, not talent or a portfolio. So we don't care what you've done before. And so that makes it where we have so many stories of people that have graduated that have never touched paint in their entire life, never drawn, don't know anything about anything, but they felt this sudden urgency to create and to paint and to step into an actual profession as an artist. And they would even say, I can't explain it. It's illogical. Like, why at age, 45, am I wanting to just suddenly be an artist? And so our program allows for that. And so people that have never touched paint before can step into it and learn everything they need to know in 1 year and actually become a professional artist, which almost sounds too good to be true. But it really, we have fruit to prove it, that people do it all the time. But then we're also attracting a lot of people who have been painting for years and years. They probably have a lot of skill. Maybe they even went to art school, but because there's so many gaps in art school, particularly finding your style and knowing your voice and knowing how to market it, then we're attracting people who do have skill and have been painting a while, but they just really don't know what their voice is or what their message is, or really what their art's all about, and they don't know how to market it or build a business. So we have people that take the program that have, even have an MFA, to people who have already been a professional artist to some degree, but just not at the level that they want to be, to brand new beginners that have never touched paint. And I know that sounds like, how is that possible that all these people are taking the same program? Like, how can a program be, work for everybody? And it just does. And it starts at the real basics of, how to hold a pencil and draw from your shoulder, and not, like this, and how to measure and draw in proportion, which could be a little bit of review for some people, but because it moves so quickly, beyond that point, they gain, a lot from it, even in the skill building section.
So how often do you enroll people? Is it just once a year, like the traditional academic kind of structure, or is it open enrollment? And also tell me about how many hours people put in a week.
Yeah, it's registration opens from the 1st to the 3rd of every month. So it's open for 3 days every single month. And we do that so that we can have good orientation and onboarding, because it's not just an online program, we're an online school. So there's a whole community, and we built out a social media for these artists to participate and build community from all over the world. And so they kind of begin as a cohort, and they have classmates and people that they get to know throughout the year. And so that's why we do it once a month. And it requires 20 to finish in a year. You would put 20 hours a week. And that's including watching videos and doing, creating. So for 20 hours a week, you can finish in a year, and there's breaks built into it. And if somebody wants to go faster, we know people that have done it in 4.5, 5 months in this complete immersive way, where they're, spending 40, 50 hours a week, completely, full on into it. And we know people that, kind of go slower and maybe do it 10 hours a week. And it takes them a couple of years.
And then you mentioned one part of the program is helping them build their brand and build their business. Is that happening sort of partway through the technical painting side of it as well, alongside that, or is that kind of come as a separate, module or semester after the event?
Yeah, it's the last part, because it's really hard to build a brand unless you know what your voice is. Because your brand, you are your brand, not your art. And so you have to really know deep down what your message is and what you're all about, and really who you are. So the voice section, which is the middle section, is a lot of self-discovery. And so we revisit all of that in the marketing section, beginning with branding and building a personal brand. And so once the branding section is through, then we go on to creating marketing collateral and teach you how to make all kinds of different marketing collateral based on that brand. And then a marketing strategy, how do you want to, what direction do you want to go in? Because the art world's so diverse. There's so many directions you could go into. So we expose everybody to all those different markets within the art world. And some, you could go the more traditional route or less traditional route, or a mixture of the two. And that would be that's again, very personal. It depends on your lifestyle, depends on your goals, might even depend on what kind of artwork you're producing. Some artwork's just not going to be, conducive to certain markets. So, and we introduce people to the different markets in the beginning of portfolio and at the end of voice section. There's a little like section where we talk about the decorative market versus the collectible market, and then the conceptual market. And, so they kind of know at that point, what is the best direction for them to start moving into.
Love that. I think there is such a knowledge gap of like these different channels to market, isn't there, amongst a lot of artists that I have in my community as well, thinking that it's a really common idea that they think, well, I'll get a gallery, or a gallery will represent me. And I mean, I've even heard people think they'll give up their full-time job if they had gallery representation. And it's like, well, might be a while before you do that, right? There's so many different ways. And I think, just understanding the different markets, the different channels is such an important part of understanding that whole landscape. Can you tell me a bit more about Art Social? What is Art Social? Because I saw that on your website.
Yeah. So Art Social is a social media that we created for artists and art lovers. And so anything pertaining to art. And it works, similar to all the other social medias that are out there, where artists can post their work. And you kind of choose the kind of post that you want to make. Maybe it's a discussion or it's a critique. So it has a little tag on the post so people know, oh, I'm supposed to critique this, or, oh, this is finished, don't critique it, and so, artists are able to post their art, get feedback. They can join communities. There's different communities on there they can join. And we're introducing a new feature at the end. It'll be at the end of this month, beginning of October, where artists will be able to actually sell their artwork. And we're not taking any percentage. We're not responsible, but we're providing the venue and the space for it. So that's a new feature coming out. And there's also like something that we have called Art Club. So everything in Art Social is free, except for Art Club is $19 a month. And what that is a whole library of instructional videos. There's over 300 videos on there where they can learn everything from how to paint eyelashes to, how to paint reflections in water or whatever. And so there's a whole library. There's a reality show called Outstanding Artists that we produce. So there's 2 seasons of that's on there. So it's sort of edutainment where they can, learn all kinds of different things about art and, creating paintings, but also, watch this really cool reality show. And then there's monthly contests where they can win cash. So we give away 5 cash prizes every month, and we give the prompt. So trying to think what it is. Last month it was painting, because a lot of people are painting women. So we had paint a man. So a male subject was the prompt. I think next month it's about reflections. So anyway, it changes every month, and there's a competition. So there's a community winner where everybody votes, and that's the person who wins. And that prize is $500. and then we have most sellable skills. There's different categories and winners for each of those, which we have judges that choose that. So it's designed to keep artists motivated, inspired, working, painting. There's a new prompt, a new challenge every month, and then there's videos that support that challenge. So if you didn't know how to paint water reflections during reflection month, you can watch the video, learn, and then apply it and see, how it comes out. So Art Club's really cool, and that's on there.
Cool.
And then of course the mastery program's on there. So there's educational material, all on this one app. So it's like social learning.
And so is Art Social only for students of the Milan Art Institute, or is that one?
No, anybody.
Open to
Anybody
anybody?
can be on there. Yeah, we don't have 80,000 students, but there's 80,000 people on there. So
Love it.
so I think there's going to be art collectors and more art appreciators coming on there, because we're beginning to run auctions. And so we have kind of this, and those are run on Art Social. So all the people that we're attracting through our ads for these art auctions are art buyers. And so they have to get an account on Art Social in order to participate. So that's why we're introducing this feature for artists to be able to sell their art, because we know we're bringing in art buyers that are buying art in these auctions.
Love it. Elli, thank you so much for your time today. I am going to add links to Milan Art Institute, Art Social, and all the good things in the show notes. I am sure that this episode is going to, have a lot of our listeners heading over to your site and checking out some of these classes. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. Thank you.